So Riot has finally decided to let Tier 2 Valorant teams make it to the most important tournament of the season, Champs. However, as I'm going to show you in this video, the actual chances of them making Champs is extremely low. But first, let's talk about why this is happening and why it potentially is a very big deal. To answer the first question, the answer is basically that the contracts that were initially signed by the partnership teams run out at the end of 2026, and therefore it seems like Riot is going to do some kind of shake-up. There's going to be some changes, whether that's the teams, whether that's how many teams, we're not exactly sure just yet, but there's going to be some big shake-up. And what that meant is that unlike previous seasons where teams have ascended from Tier 2 to Tier 1, there will be no Ascension tournament in 2026, because we don't exactly know what it's going to look like in 2027. There's probably going to be some fundamental changes. So, therefore, there wasn't this carrot that Riot was really offering to Tier 2 teams anymore because they can't ascend. So instead, what they decided to do is say, well, okay, well, we're going to give you the chance to play at Champs instead. And that actually is quite a big carrot, because not only is Champs the most prestigious and biggest tournament of the entire Valorant season, it also comes with the Champs skin bundle, which generally sells quite well and also gives money to the teams that attend Champs. So if you're a Tier 2 team, you could potentially make quite a significant amount of money by just attending Champs. And we have seen in previous seasons, some of the data of how much teams actually make from those skin sales going to the teams. And that actually is a significant amount of money. However, the road to actually get there for the Tier 2 Challengers teams is quite difficult, as I now will explain. So, this all comes from this little article that was specifically released about Pacific, but I'm sure will apply to the other regions as well. It basically just goes through how the Pacific season is going to work. Like, it goes through like kickoff. We're getting triple elim. Yay, yay. But the part that we're really interested in is stage 2 and how this works, right? So, here's how stage 2 will work. Got a group stage of the Tier 1 teams. You then have a playoffs like normal, but you also have a play-ins, and we'll get to that in a second, and the top 2 teams from playoffs and champ points qualify to Champs. Stage 2 will run from July 16th to September 6th, and we'll again have 2 groups of 6 teams. The top 2 teams from each group will qualify directly to the Stage 2 playoffs. So, if you're a Tier 1 team, and you finish in the top 2 of your group, you skip this play-ins bit, and you go straight to the playoffs as normal. The remaining 8 teams, comprising of the teams placed 3rd to 6th in the group, will move to the play-in stage. That's this. At the play-in, they will be joined by 4 teams from the region's Challengers Leagues to compete in a double elimination bracket. Now, we're not exactly sure how the Challengers teams are going to be picked. It might be done, based on like 2 NA teams, 1 Brazil team, 1 LATAM team, kind of separated by region, or maybe they'll put them all into one big tournament and just pick the best 4. The 3rd and 4th place teams from each group will earn a first round bye in the upper bracket. So that is in the play-ins. So if you finish 3rd or 4th in your group, you get a bye in the play-in. And the top 4 teams from the play-ins will advance to the playoffs. I know, it's very confusing. So you need to finish in the top 4 of this just to get to this, and then you need to finish in the top 2 of this to make this. The final 8 teams will battle through a best of 3 double elimination bracket with best of 5 matches played during the lower final and grand final. The top placing teams from the stage 2 group stage will receive a first round bye in the upper bracket. So again, going back to this, if you finish as number 1 in your group A or group B here, not only do you get a bye to the playoffs, but then you also get a bye in the playoffs. So finishing first in the group is, potentially worth quite a lot here overall. And then the 3rd and 4th place teams from the play-ins start in the lower bracket. We'll get to that in a second. At the end of stage 2, the top 2 teams will advance to Champs 2026. Will be joined by the top 2 teams that qualify via champ points. Now, let's start there. Basically, 2 teams make it through playoffs and 2 teams make it through champ points. But there in itself is a massive disadvantage for the Tier 2 teams because they can't get champ points. So there's 2 spots of the 4 that go to champs already completely eliminated from them being able to get it. The Tier 2 teams are only competing for 2 slots. So that in and of itself is a massive disadvantage. However, what I've now done is I'm going to show you what it would have looked like had we had last year's results, right? So I've taken the top 4 teams that finished in Ascension that weren't already in Tier 1, and I've put the Tier 1 teams, how they finished in the Stage 2 groups last year, so you can kind of see how it would have worked if this was last year's results. So let's start with Pacific, right? So these were the results. So here you've got the play-in teams, over towards this side here. The 4 teams that finished in the top 2 they're already qualified. So that would have been DRX, PaperX, RRQ, and Talon if this was last year, right? And then within the play-in teams, you've got 12 teams here. Nongshim, T1, Genji, and DFM, the teams in the purple boxes, those teams would have got a bye in the play-in, so they wouldn't have to play the first game. I've then also got, you know, the tier 2 teams here, which are the best teams from Ascension, and they would have played against, first up, these teams, right? So this is like what the games might have been, right? You might have had Motive versus Boom, SLT versus Global, Nous versus Zeta, Velocity versus Team Secret. And initially, when you're looking at that, you might say like, oh, I actually think, you know, some of those tier 2 teams could win this game. And I agree with you. The problem is they need to finish in the top 4 of this thing, right? So they are going to also have to beat teams like Nongshim, T1, Genji, DFM, you know, to potentially make it through to the playoffs, right? And when you start looking at that, I think that's when you start to think, SLT, yeah, they could probably do that. Would SLT have been better than DFM? Maybe. Would they have been better than Nongshim? Well, yeah, because they kind of beat them in Ascension. So, you know, SLT, they probably would have made it. But would the others have made it? I'm not so sure. But let's say that, you know, one team would have definitely gone through and maybe one of the other teams would have, right? And I did it for the other regions too. So here's Americas, right? So again, you got Sentinels, NRG, G2, and Lev. They would have already been through. Could Envy have beaten Furia? Yes, I definitely think Envy would have beaten Furia, right? Or TSM, could they have beaten Loud? Yeah, maybe. You know, like, yeah, you could win some of these games. Would Envy have been better than EG and Crew? Yeah, maybe TSM would as well. Winthrop and Team Solid, I'm less certain of, but maybe they could win a game as well. Americas was a little weak last year, so yeah, they might have done it right. So again, maybe you're looking at like 1 or 2 teams, you know, making it through the play-ins. And in the MEA, similar sort of story again, where could Ulf beat Apex? Yes. Could BO Pacific beat Mates? Yes, probably. You know, again, maybe you're looking at 1 or 2 teams making it through the play-ins, but I don't think we're looking at a scenario where like all 4 definitely will. Yeah, these tier 2 teams, the best tier 2 teams probably will beat the worst tier 1 teams. But as I'm now about to demonstrate, even then, it's going to be so difficult for them to actually make champs, because what I've done here is I've given you like a kind of what might have happened in Americas. Okay, so let's say that this was the results. I think this would be a fairly, you know, normal outcome of a play-in at that point in the year. Cloud9 win it, 100 Thieves second, Envy finished third, and MIBR finished fourth. And we've got, you know, the 4 other teams that already qualified. They will now join us in an 8-team thing. But the crucial thing that you might have like glossed over a bit when I was reading the article is that if you finish 3rd or 4th in the play-in, then you go straight to the lower bracket. And so a bracket would look something like this, right? Where we've got the uppers here. You got Cloud9, Lev, 100 Thieves, G2. You know, they go on to play Sen or NRG. And then here in the lowers, you've got MIBR and Envy, right? And so if you're Envy, you now have to go on a run where you have to win 4 straight games against, you know, good teams. You know, now we've gotten rid of the bad teams. The bad teams are now gone. And you need to win 4 games in a row without losing one to make it to champs. That's just unlikely to happen. So basically what I'm saying is, for these tier 2 teams, they need to finish in the top 2 of this play-in, right? They need to, because they need to make it all the way to this grand final. So they need to start in the uppers, because the chances of you running it all the way through the lowers is just so unlikely, right? It's just not gonna happen. And if you're wondering and asking like, well, TMV, what could they have realistically done? There actually is quite a few things that they could have done here. They could have had it so that only one team makes it through on champ points, meaning that there's 3 slots available in the playoffs. They could have made it so that when you actually get to the playoffs, there is no one starting in the lower bracket like this. You just do a full 8-team normal bracket. But Riot has decided to choose a path where if you are a tier 2 team that wants to go to champs, you are going to have to earn it and then some.